Okay, so hope you can hear me. Sorry about having to delay for a little bit. We're here, and it's been an absolutely amazing week. I was looking back at the videos that I created over the last week, and I'm just going to walk through some of the concepts just briefly before I answer your questions, and just so you can see like how weird of a week and things have been. Like things have been weird on other weeks. Some weeks were just like very depressing. But I started last Sunday with a video about why did Putin do it? Why did he invade? Which was a foreign policy piece that was talking about. Look, I mean, and this resonated with me. That's why I did the video. And people would say, no, he did it because he wanted Ukraine. Well, of course he wanted Ukraine. like duh. But it wasn't just that. He did it because he was within a system that allowed him to do it, because as a dictator, all his underlings were trying to please him, feed him wrong information, and the system was geared to give him what he was getting. So he did what he did because he thought that everything was kosher. Okay. Oh man, I gotta address Andre's question before I do anything else. And I was trying to, well, maybe I'll just address your questions instead. Andre asked why storm shadows are not used to hit ships. You just retracted that. Do you want to talk about that or not, Andre? Like you retracted the message already. Okay, I'll come back to it if you want to talk about it. So he did it for that reason. Then I talked about -7 Russian commanders off the battlefield. I said 3 were killed, and the others were Prigozhin, and then Surovikin, and then the really competent airborne general, and the commander of the Chechen Special Forces. But I didn't realize at the time I'd gotten the one guy wrong. And then we had Agent Zelensky, which was a video about, it was Scott Ritter with, as soon as I saw that Scott Ritter, Agent Zelensky, a Scott Ritter production, I was like, oh man, this is going to be rich. And it was about as terrible of a hatchet job as you could possibly imagine. Like, think about the worst documentary where you knew things were factually wrong. Like, I used to like, oh, what's his name? This guy that does these little bits about history. Somebody ruins everything. Adam ruins everything. I used to think, oh, that's interesting. I learned something interesting about it, until he did one on the Constitution. And I did my doctoral dissertation on the U.S. Constitution. So so when he did that episode, I was like, okay, 85% of everything he said was wrong here. And from that point forward, I just couldn't stomach watching it. It's that kind of feel when you watch Scott Ritter. So at any rate, Agent Zelensky, and then we did a weekly recap, and then the Kerch Bridge. So then the night before, I'm watching just trolling different videos about Ukraine, and the enforcer was talking about the Kerch hit. So I immediately pulled out my computer and Googled the enforcer. Like, people were like, why are you giving props to the enforcer? Don't you know what he does to Mercado? I don't, honestly. But he was the only one covering this anywhere on YouTube or even in the news before. Like there was no Google News about it while he was talking about it, because he was getting things from Twitter. And then shortly thereafter, Constantine was talking about it, and so I watched them. So we talked about the Kerch, then I talked about -9 commanders, and I still got that one wrong, the one that had died in 2022, and so I had my math off. But then mercifully, the next day, the Ukrainians took out another commander in Crimea, and so that brings it back to 9. So we're in good shape with that. Um, we're talking about how Russian explains the Kerch attack. I'm going to do one more video on the Kerch where I tie everything together, and then we'll be done with, I think, the Kerch for now. I printed the retraction. We talked about the grain deal. I talked about how they're seeing it in Russian news, the Kerch Bridge, whether it's a legitimate target or terror. The Kerch Bridge attack is a legitimate target. Military, whatever, can come in and out. But what they did to Odessa was terror. In fact, they actually hit the Chinese embassy, or not Chinese embassy, Chinese consulate, like some of the rockets that they had. um, some shrapnel or other pieces affected, blew out windows, and did some other things to the Chinese consulate. So the Russians have to be careful with that. Okay, so I'm going to answer your question in just a little bit of time. One more little bit here. So we talked about the number of Wagner casualties. So that was really instructive because when Wagner has 78,000 and they lose about 80% of them, you only have about 16,000 left. And so this march on uh, Moscow, so 16,000 is the total that you could possibly have that are healthy. Well, yeah, it could be much larger. One, it wasn't larger. They said they didn't never saw 25,000 at once. And really, you're going to be terrified of 25 that are half injured. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And they didn't bring everybody. So, okay. And then we talked about RFK being a nut job. He doesn't have a chance of winning an election. He's just a nut job. And if RT is amplifying you, that's a sign that something went wrong. And then finally, the view of the counteroffensive from the battlefield in Russia. And I want to thank if oh man, Steven Sipe, if you're here, can you repost what you posted to me yesterday or like a summary of that if you're here? Because that was great. Because I was like, I'm watching. So some of these things after a long enough time, and I'm going to get your questions in 2 minutes. After you've watched this long enough, you start to see things. And there's a difference between, like in the academic literature, we talk about implicit knowledge and explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge, I can explain, I can teach you how to do something, I can explain, do this to do this to do that. And implicit knowledge is like how you know how to ride a bike, but you can't necessarily explain it to someone so that they can do it themselves, or like how you understand something. So like if you're a nurse, you intuitively might know like, oh, this patient, I see some sign. I don't know what it is, but I see some sign that they're not right. They're going to need some help. I better get help now. It's that kind of thing. And so when I saw the counteroffensive in on RT from the Russian perspective, I'm like, this guy, he can't be near the front line. There's no way. I can't prove it, but I can't. And then so people mentioned in the comments, so you guys are awesome. In the comments, they were saying, yeah, see this type of fortification, see how there's no dirt on this, see how there's, and they went through thing after thing after thing. It was really impressive. So okay, so let me start with some questions now. I will try to see where, so Andre, yeah, everybody else is just saying good morning until about Andre, who's saying, judging from the videos of the, oh, there's a chat that just popped up. Goose Springsteen, thank you for the stream as always, Professor. Did I see the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK was sacked after criticizing Zelensky's comment? Thank you, Goose. I did see that, and I want to say this about it. I don't know if it was that comment that did it or whether there was something else. So sometimes there could be timing. So timing is a factor that might, so just because something precedes something else in time and space doesn't mean that it actually uh, is. Let me grab this. I use this book in class. It's The Fifth Discipline. It's really academically nerdy. So it's not a light read. It's not something that you want to read unless you really are into this kind of thing. But we trick ourselves sometimes into thinking that this caused that when it just because it preceded it in time and space. But there could be a long lag between cause and effect. And so I'm hesitant to say that his comment caused it because I don't know that there's each sacking him in the same way, bringing him to jail. So it could be that. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Andre Lazaver, judging from videos of the first UA use of cluster. Oh, Andre, I thought you were going to ask about the long-term missiles and hitting ships. I think we need to do that. Judging from the use of first UA use of cluster ammo, I'm surprised to see that it produces a bagel shape with a large hole instead of filled rectangle. It makes it harder to target effectively. Don't know. I'm not a military guy. I don't claim any expertise there, but I heard that it's effective. I've read that it's effective. Experts tend to see. So while I don't claim expertise, I read the experts and hear what they have to say and then try to make sense of it. Josh says, why Girkin picked the nom de guerre there's a reason for that, but I don't remember what it was. Was it his streamer name or whatever? It may have been something militarily related, but I do not know. How about Putin's comments regarding Poland at the public security meeting? I think that's diversion, Lawrence. I that's all. I mean, there's no, like, Poland's not like, hey, we're gonna get to invade. Big Bad John says, was attacking the bridge worth the price of Ukraine now being landlocked and all your ammo and fuel depots in Odessa getting destroyed? Well, Putin wasn't not going to do that anyway. If he, like, destroy things, he's going to destroy things anyway. But the psychological impact of the Kerch, um, Putin is getting taken down a notch and a notch and a notch and a notch, and sooner or later, that we don't know exactly when, there'll be a sudden break. We don't know when that is. So yes, that price was it, and the Kerch is going to get hit again, and then the people of Ukraine will shelter in place a little bit longer while he throws his tantrum, and they'll hit it again, and that's the way it's going to work. Um, Putin should just not have been in Ukraine to begin with, Big Bad John. Uh, Josh Earhart Lorenz, was that real? I almost thought it was a deep fake. What's that? I'm not sure if we're talking about I don't know what we're talking about. If we're talking about Girkin or Putin or what. Please enable the Q&A mode to help manage all of the questions. How do I enable Q&A mode? I don't know what I'm doing here. So enable Q&A mode. Edit. No, I'm going to try to edit and see if there's something I can do in edit. Q&A mode. Where do I go for that? Okay. I don't know what I'm doing, but if somebody can tell me in one of the things below, I will try to do it. To manage all the questions. Okay, isn't China a buyer of grain from Russia and Ukraine? Aren't those higher grain prices going to hurt Russia's allies too? Yes, unless Russia gives a sweetheart deal to its allies. This is what I propose. What I said in the. So go back to the grain deal assessment video. So what Russia may very well do is, China, you get a sweetheart deal. African countries that we like, South Africa and I don't know. Ethiopia, hypothetically, or Angola, the South Sudan, right? You'll get this price that we had before. Everyone else can starve because, kind of screw them is the way that they'll approach it, unless you're on Team Russia. And so Egypt was not happy about the grain deal either. Okay. Putin already decided the grain deal prior to the bridge attack. That's correct, Lorenz. It was not about the bridge attack. So that's actually a great answer to Big Bad John up there. I knew that part of that part, though. Thank you. Did he just pick it like his stage name? Okay, Andre. Why storm shadows are not used to destroy parked ships and subs in Sevastopol out of range? Message was accidentally deleted. I was like, why did you delete that? That's a great way to start. I think we're not very long, and I'm not a military guy, but my gut tells me, and I have no proof, zero proof, right? This is just, but my gut tells me it's not too long before we're going to see some long range attack on ships that's going to sink something that's going to be more reputational damage to Putin, because it's not about the ship. It's about the reputational damage to Putin. Yes, you sink the ship, it can't shoot the missiles or whatever it does. I did a video on Crimea about almost a year ago now, about the importance of the Black Sea and what was going on. And and in that, I was talking about how, like, I was reading reports, the Russians, then the Ukrainians have no navy to speak of, and the Russians are afraid of them. They've moved their ships so far back that they can't be touched because they're afraid of another Moskva kind of incident. So once they get the kind of missile that will get in there, you'll see something happen when they feel like they can drone swarm or do something that will attack a ship. They'll do it, and it won't be too terribly long. It's too tempting a target. Why do we not see global media war from Ukraine on war crimes and ecocide, especially in the context of neutral states? Part of this is, I think, that the media has gotten the sense at this point that it is not going to become World War III, which they were concerned about initially, and I'm still concerned about potentially. And so they have downgraded the view of it, compared to whatever the latest bleeding leading thing is. And so it gets attention periodically. Like Kerch is hit and it's on regular news, but an average day is not. So I think that's what's going on, but I don't know. Anyone who says something like that is by nature, like that is by nature, I don't know what we're talking about. Do you think that we should prepare for the unfortunate reality of a long war? Yes, I've maintained that for a while. To be prepared to put Ukrainian troops through full training rather than abridged. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this will be over at Christmas. I mean, um, at New Year's, I was predicting we'll be here next New Year's, I think. And I hope that I'm wrong. I want to be wrong, but I just think that there's that. Loren said, can you block people like Big Bad John? We don't have to answer his question if he's going to whatever. As long as he is not going to be obnoxious, he can just ask whatever. But if once he's obnoxious, then I'll do that. Cheryl says the grain deal had already lapsed when the Kerch was struck. The grain deal went for a year, and then it was extended while Erdogan was in his election because that was helping Erdogan win. And then after that, it fell apart. Old Foggy says Prigozhin gets a pass and Girkin is arrested. Something else is still in the offing. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that in another video, but here's a short answer. Girkin has no emotional intelligence and kept going when, like, if my kid steals a cookie and I say, don't take that cookie, we need those for later, don't do it. And then my other kid is sitting there and watches me tell one kid, don't take that cookie, we need those for later, and then takes a cookie, something's not right, right? That's where Girkin is relative to Prigozhin. Like, he should have backed off or slowed down or not attacked Putin. But I'll talk more about that in a much more extensive way in the next video. Pluck Me says Russia was always going to attack Ukraine on its way to the gap in Poland, Carpathian Mountains. Well, but then got slowed down, though. I mean, the plans got slowed down. The Poles have always known this. And I did an entire video about the Svalty. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Gap. Sawalty. If you Google the actual correct spelled name, not how I pronounce it, I pronounce things terribly. Even in America, I pronounce things terribly. So, okay. I just lost my place again. Wow, there's a lot of questions here. Okay. 2020 is the best. Wow, that's a terrible name. Why are you assuming that the Kerch Bridge is so critical for the Russian army when they have already damaged or destroyed a public admittedly 30% of Ukraine vehicles meant for the offensive? So your question is a little off. When the 30% of the vehicles that have been deployed to the offensive, not 30% meant for the offensive. I read the New York Times article about that. But yeah, that was bad. But they're also going through minefields. This is both psychologically important as well as it reroutes things, which creates another thing. My next video about the Kerch, which will come out later, I think today, will wrap everything up in that, and I'm answering that very question of why it's so important. John Hall says, do you think that Wagner will move on the Sawalty? There it is, Sawalty gap. Will this cause an Article 5? I don't think that will happen. I think that they're going to saber rattle about it, but won't do it. 2020 is the best. It feels like Ukrainian army is going to attrition faster itself on the defensive lines than the Russians would do without the bridge. And that's how it started. So you feel like a bit of a pro-Russian kind of something, but you might not be. You might just be asking really like pushback kind of questions. And so I'm going to answer it with in an appropriate spirit, because you might just be testing to push against it. So that's exactly what they were doing in the first week or two. They were really attriting themselves fast, and then they realized this isn't going to work without air cover. We can't do this. So they started getting out of the vehicles and in small infantry units going through the minefield and jumping in the trench to try to knock out that first line before they tried to move things through. That's a terrible way to have to do business, but they realized that what they were doing wasn't working, and simultaneously using artillery to knock out emplacements behind it. Okay, Cheryl, trolls are paid for engagement, so block them. Well, you tell me who you're pretty clear is a troll, and we'll work on that. Reykjavik speaking, when do you think Ukraine will attack the Kerch Bridge again? Uh, I don't think it'll be 6 months. I think it'll be well before that. But I don't have any feel for when. I mean, I want him to do it tomorrow, but I don't know. Kerch Bridge has cultural and emotional significance to Russia. Vlad Vexler did a great. Yeah, that's exactly right, Sandra. So it's kind of like I was thinking about this myself, and I'm going to say this when I get to that video on my wrap up on the Kerch. Well, I hope now I said that I'm going to say this. So it's in my mind to say this. And if I don't want to be a liar, but it's kind of like 9/11, right? I grew up 20 minutes outside New York. You could see the Twin Towers from some part of my town on Route 22. If you're looking just the right way, you could see the Twin Towers on a very clear day. And when I lived in Virginia, when the towers came down, and like I felt punched in the gut. Same kind of thing. There's a deep psychological impact here. Big Bad John is trolling, so we can just ignore him for now. Twitter is and Colonel Doug live in a Ritter and Colonel Doug live in a reality, and then you and Peter Zeon. One side is lying to me. This is a lesson for me. By the end of this war, I'll learn who I can trust. Okay, so I'm not sure that I want to be in the side with Zion. I want to be in the place where I'm saying, okay, I'm here. This is what I see here. This is what I see here. This is what I see here. Now make sense of this. This is what I see. What do you see? Please go and do your own homework and understand. Now, I do tend to line up with Jake and Vlad and Anna and Georgie and others along these lines in the way that I see, but I'm trying to say, do your homework and see what's out there. And then I'll show you the other side as well and show you what they're saying. And I show you what they're saying, not to say, is it this or this? How do we know which is true? Right? I'm not doing that. I'm saying, this is what I believe is right. This is what they're saying. Now, why are they saying this about that? Okay. So, it's not that I don't want to be like on this. I am on all Ukrainian, right? I'm on this side. I have the hat. This is a coaster my wife just got me for my birthday. Like that, isn't that cool? It was made in Ukraine. I was urging you to go get the pin or do something. Just show your support for Ukraine somewhat. So I am all in for Ukraine, but I'm trying to see clearly. And when I had to deliver bad news, like the other day, what was the video? The counteroffensive, the whole truth. Look, that was the least fun video I did in a long time, but it showed you clearly the kind of things that they're up against, because you have to understand that, right? Just saying, well, we're going to break through in a week. It's just not realistic. We got a little bit. Our expectations were raised, unfortunately, because of the Kharkiv and Kherson when they pushed back. By the way, I want to give Servakin props. I know that sounds weird because he's a terrible person. He's a terrible human being, but as a general, he did exactly the right thing. And he gets a very bad look because he had to withdraw from Kherson. But by withdrawing from Kherson, he took and deployed those troops and put them back over all the obstacles that they're now facing. So as a military commander and a leader, he did the right thing. But he just got a black eye for it because he's the guy that had to withdraw from Kherson. So, I mean, he did right, and you can see that if you're looking hard enough. Okay, Peter Demlov. It can be a world war when one side has. It can't be a world war when one side has no allies. But we don't know what could trigger what and what could cause behind the scenes if Russia and NATO get involved, if China or India or something leans into it, or BRICS or what. I mean, we just don't know what's going to happen. We didn't think that World War I was going to kick off the way it did, but there are all these entangled alliances, and so I don't think it would just be Russia versus all of NATO. I think Russia might have something deeper in its back pocket, North Korea or whatever, or God forbid nukes or what. You just don't know. So you have to be very careful and thoughtful about this through the entire process. The Big Cat says, I'm more concerned about World War III now than at the start of the war. Putin gets more desperate every day. Okay. So that's true. He does get more desperate. He keeps getting painted back into a corner. But I I don't know. I don't think he has any plans to go anywhere. I did a video where I was talking about 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are now going to be doing military exercises or military classes through school, and then in camp and in the summer that's voluntary. So they're trying to groom them. By the way, when the right calls left groomers, they're not talking about like sexual, they're talking about like ideological grooming. Now, sexual might be part of that, but ideologically grooming them, taking them from their parents' values to that, I think that's kind of what Putin is doing by way of analogy, is ideologically grooming them. Okay. And so there's that. And then they just had a bill in the Duma raising the age or the age for reservists and the age for service itself. And you can be like 40 or 50, and depending on your classification in the Russian military, have to be called back to service now. So he has no appetite to go anywhere. But I don't think it's about World War III so much as he just doesn't want to lose Ukraine. Okay. Cheryl says Crimea is a dagger point at the heart. I just lost my place here. Crimea is where are you, Cheryl? Okay. Wow, that's a lot of comments. Crimea is Crimea is a dagger point pointed at the heart of Ukraine. China has a foot. How about Putin's comments regarding Poland? We just talked about. Greetings, Prof. Hello. Cheryl says Crimea is in Ukraine's hands, and the key is the key to long-term security and prosperity. And that's right. I mean, you can't have the Russian fleet parked in Sevastopol and still have peace. Suwalki Gap, just block Big Red John. How do you do that? Can you do that from your own? Oh, you can you report oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. This is new to me. I don't know how to do the Q&A thing either, or how the super chat things work or whatever. I just know they pop up. I'm learning incrementally, but the tech takes me a little while. Okay. I'll lead. Nice lead. I'll follow. In regards, okay. Comment on Syria in regard to stating that they will kick out the illegal presence of U.S. military on sovereign soil by force. Do they not leave already? I don't know what's there, so I can't really speak to that. Big Bad John is removed, and so bye-bye. Okay. Cheryl Waitley, Russia can just get over Crimea. I hear the apartment's free. Yeah, I was looking that up. So that's funny. I actually did look for Google search and I couldn't find anything, but I was looking for like hotel vacancies in Crimea. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but I would imagine you can get it for a song right now. I just thought that would be an interesting thing to track. How I always wondered why during the initial invasion, observing the long Russian convoys on highways stopped, that Ukraine didn't employ IEDs or lay mines or place disabled vehicles. Well, they actually did place vehicles in the path once they got into towns. But I mean, it took everybody by surprise, including the Russian military, who did not know until just a few hours, like a day before, that they were going to invade Ukraine because Putin held it so close to his chest. So yeah, that's what was going on there. I read that about 6 months in. Okay, JS, they're protecting oil. ISIS is dead. We're not talking to me. So by mining the Black Sea, Russia will not allow wheat, and the only countries that support Russia, like Africa and the Middle East and some Asian countries. Yeah. So look, the Ukrainians have essentially. I talked about 6 different options in the what's the video? The grain deal assessment video I did 2 days ago, and so they can take it through rivers like the Danube. Is Danube? I think it's. But they can take it through rivers back into Europe. They can take it over rail by train, but a cargo ship is so much more efficient. They don't want it in Poland. Somebody pointed out in that comment, no, Poland doesn't want it. Poland's fine with it passing through. The Polish farmers don't want it to stay, and that's where they are. So they can take it over rail. They can take it by ship, or they can take it like through rivers. Ships are far more efficient, and that's what they would like to do, but I mean, they can't. Constantine on Inside Russia said his relatives were forced to move to Crimea. Wow. That's really interesting. When will the U.S. give F-16 to Ukraine? Well, they started training recently, but I can't tell you that. Putin is rather selective in his historical revisionism, always forgetting Soviet collaborating with Nazis in attack on Poland. Yeah, that's fascinating. He always is. So it's the real question is who really shot himself in the foot? I think Russia did. That sounds right to me. Can it be said that Russia currently shows a lot of signs of weakness? Yes, I did a video about that, about Russia is weaker than you think about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And you really ought to see that. Where was it? Maybe it was 2 weeks. It's still every point still holds. Russia is weaker than you think. Um, I'm looking at my list of videos, and I'm not seeing where that is. It goes back a way, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. They really are. There's a big 7 on the video, and Russia is weaker than you think. Greetings from France. Russia had the effect of making NATO great again. That's exact that, and that was one of my points, because like they made Ukrainian nationality like strong. They made NATO a force that was supposed to be what NATO was, and like they hadn't thought about it. Okay, a super popped up, and I'm going to address those first because I'm trying to prioritize them because they're actually being kind by encouraging me with that. Politically, to attack Putin, the idea that he is a right-wing hero needs to be demolished. The way he targets his political foes is like Che Guevara. Yeah, so he's not right-wing in a conservative sense. I hear people say that he's an Orthodox Christian, and I chuckle because like Hitler used the church too. Like he's putting on the garb to use them, but he's not me. Like I'm a conservative Christian, right? I make no bones about that. That's who I am, and I bring that into my analysis. That shapes the way I see things. He is not anything like where I am. So that he's right wing. And no, he's FSB dressing up in the garb of what he thinks the population is going to want to hear about a strong authoritarian leader who is using tradition as his foil, as his shield. I am defender of you and our traditions. So no, he's nothing like that, and that's actually a really great point. By the way, right and left wing are an interesting thing. I was at a conference a number of years ago. Libertarians pointed out. A libertarian professor pointed out this whole right wing left wing. When you get to the ends of the spectrum, they're both authoritarians, and they're actually both competitors. They're both like right here, right next to each other. It's not about right or left for them. It's about totalitarians competing for total control. Okay, so thank you for bringing that up with that white lightning. I appreciate that. Okay. I hope I didn't lose my place here. Putin is rather selective. Okay, I talked about that. Mountain West says there are several ways this could happen, but the most likely now is that there is so much discontent among the Russian army that it wouldn't take much for battalions or soldiers to do. I think anything, if you're talking about overthrowing Putin or something along those lines, anything that would happen there would have to come from his boyar class, whether it's oligarchs or military or something else. But the people are very desensitized, and Putin is doing things to keep them desensitized, whether trying to show that he's a strong man to Prigozhin or Girkin or whatever. Josh Earnhardt says it's not your oil, it's Syrian. Okay, I'm going to skip that. I don't know why we're talking about that. Nikita Romeo. By the way, there are 5 of you. Nikita is one. 5 of you that have watched, that I'm aware of, that have watched all the back episodes all the way to 85. You guys are awesome. It's so heartening to know that somebody has done that, because like when I was going from 85 to like 150, I was talking into the void. It was crickets there. Like right now I have 16,000 subscribers, right? And that's pretty good for me. I don't know how that happened either. I mean, much of that happened fairly recently, but when I had like 100, maybe I was at like 150 by the time I had 100. Day 150 by the time it just came long. So people that go back and have watched that really is encouraging to me. And if you have done that, please please let me know. If only life was so easy that once you know one side lied about something, then the opposite must be true. Yeah, that's not necessarily true, and that's a great point. It's not that easy. Just because these guys lie doesn't mean that these guys are telling the truth. And I hope I didn't give you that impression. What I do say is that I know that RT lies regularly, and sometimes they tell the truth in amidst their lies, and it's surprising. But they lie about things very, very regularly, and I pointed that out in the which video was it? The how lies spread. Man, that is, to my mind, that's one of the best videos that I've ever done. This is about propaganda, about how the propaganda process works. If you have not seen how lies spread, it's 5 videos back. Please watch that video. If you do nothing else, or watch nothing else that I've done in the last week, watch that video. Okay. I'm just saying, as in the U.S. forests, I don't know about oil myself. Okay, he's talking to me. You're not talking to me. Enforcer Stream is a great piece of work, over 1 million raised for a good cause. And yeah, I recognize that the Enforcer and Mercado have gotten into some kind of fight. I'm not involved in that. I'm Switzerland. I don't have anything to do with whatever's going on there. Mercado has given me a shout out, and I appreciate that. And that's because I had shown something that they did in the past, and some people came to me from Mercado. Great. I don't have any issue. Enforcer was the first one on this topic, and I saw it with my own eyes. That, like, there was nothing even on Google, like in real news at this time. So I'm just not in the middle of that. Cheryl Waitley, and I hate to see that two UA tubers are actually at odds with each other. Like, because the issue is the bad guys over there. We should kind of give a united front. I don't agree with everything Jake Bro says, but there's not enough to fight with him about. Like we approach things differently in a couple of places that I can think about. But okay, he can have his perspective and I can have mine, and we're still trying to find truth about what's going on in Ukraine. So it's okay. That, I mean, there, why be at odds with each other? I don't understand that, but maybe I'm just not informed. Okay. Cheryl says the idea that nothing is true and everything is possible is a propaganda technique. Pointed. Yeah, that's correct. And that is part of the way that they approach propaganda. Russia is really dug in the South. Mines are effective. That's correct. And Surovikin is responsible for that, and he deserves. Weirdly, he deserves props for that. America, I mean, from the Russian perspective, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. America worked in coalition with Russia and Syria, bruh. And why are we talking about Russia and Syria? Andre, what was going on at the Antonovsky Bridge on the left side of the Dnipro River? Don't know. Can't answer, but I will look. Pluck Me says, I'm Polish, so I'm likely biased. A lot of hard feelings toward Russia, but your segments are interesting. Thanks for taking the time to share. You're welcome. Somebody told me about the Poles after I was mentioning the Ukrainian national anthem, "The Glory of Ukraine Has Not Yet Perished," that the Poles, and I looked this up, have a very similar national anthem beginning, like that Poland has not yet perished. You guys live in a hard neighborhood where you have to put that into your national anthem. I guess we have one too, with the Star Spangled Banner, that our flag was still there, right? I mean, but yeah, I didn't know that your anthem went like that. By definition, no propaganda is true. Things are more complicated, and you see maybe the top 10% of things happening. Yeah, that's why you have to triangulate and look at all kinds of different perspectives. I'm really trying. John, oh no, you're not even talking to me. Okay, good. There's a lot of people talking at each other, so I can skip them. If Putin is not pinned into a corner, Ukraine will be. Sad but true. Ukraine shall prevail. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Chris Bishop. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. I just lost my place. Wow, there's a lot of comments here. Okay. Chris Bishop, did I see you? Okay, Chris Bishop. I am Chris Bishop, BJJ. I'm BBJ. I'm impressed with your living on the streets and still finding the time to repeat rushing to. You're not talking to me. My bad. I thought this was about global, not Ukraine and Russia. They need to sign peace and negotiate. People are dying in vain. War ain't good for anyone. No, it's not good for anyone, and I wish that Putin hadn't started it. 10,000 what near Bakhmut? I don't know what we're talking, what the context is here. Okay, the EU doesn't need all that Ukrainian grain. There's more than enough grain produced by EU farmers, and that's correct. Which really is going to hurt in Asia and Africa and some places in the Middle East, including Egypt. That's very upset about this. F-16s are going to dominate. That's what um, demine. That's what's slowing our team down. Yeah. So if you have air cover, this would be a very different experience. I heard one brigadier general say that CIWS would do good in Ukraine, and I think he's right. Would you say that the EU, that an EU far right and far left are united in support of Russia and Putin? Funny thing, always enemies, now support the same side. Well, so I can't tell you about the EU, but in the United States, on the far right, and now far right shifts. So far right now is more populist. I would have been called far right just 10 years ago, just as a Christian conservative, right? And it's shifted to a Trumpian kind of something that is displaced whatever I am, and people will call me moderate. I'm not moderate. I don't claim to be moderate. I don't think of myself as moderate. I think of myself as a capital R. Like if you look at the thing, is like capital D, lowercase d, center, uh, small r, uh, large r. That's how some of the things. I think of myself as a pretty consistent conservative type, but far right means something very different now, which is the Trumpian populist, isolationist kind of something that Trump came in with, and that was different. I'm still back in the George Bush kind of Ronald Reagan kind of mode. Yes, so they are very much pro-Russian, and then on the other side you have on the far left, the furthest extreme of it, they have a whole different agenda, and Ukraine just gets in the way, and they don't want that. And it's not as strong on the far left, but yeah, the further you go out on the spectrum, the more united they are on against Ukraine. Okay, what I say? Okay, about the Soviet-Nazi collaboration in World War II, was that omitted in the curriculum history here? That was omitted in the curriculum history here in Norway when I grew up in the 1980s for some reason. At least that's how I remembered it. So it wasn't a strong point in the American curriculum either, but it was there that Hitler double crossed the deal and the Molotov-Ribbentrop. I might be mispronouncing the names, but I mispronounce lots of names. In their pact, and then Hitler went, broke that deal and invaded Russia. As I understand, the Russian Orthodox Church is no longer in communion with the rest of the Orthodox Church. That's interesting. I have one question. Would it be, Madrick says, would it be possible for the West to intercept the missiles of the Russian Navy? I'm thinking that the USA has the right to do that as a punishment for the okay. That seems like a lot of the kind of intervention that you could argue both ways, and I don't think they want to involve themselves with that kind of potential to kick off a larger war. But I understand what you're asking. Oliver Jasko says, Prof, question. All of our reports show that Russia is undermanned, under-equipped, and demoralized, but Ukraine doesn't have any substantial ground. Before it was Wagner, now because of mines. Any truth? Yeah, I mean, the mines are really slowing them down. I mean, please, if you don't understand what's going on in the counteroffensive, go back to my video on the counteroffensive, the whole truth, 3 days ago. Okay, it's like 10 videos ago because I've been prolific in the last few days. The counteroffensive, the whole truth, and see that, because once you see visually what the battlefield looks like, you're like, oh, well, this makes sense why it's taking so long to get through. So there is a lot of truth in why that it is slow and why it's slow. Richie MC says, hey, Professor Gerdes, what annoys me is why we do not hear about NATO Fortune 500 companies donating aid to Ukraine, because it's a sexier story to talk about those that are still in Russia, and then Russia nationalized a couple of European countries. Like, you should have just gotten out. I mean, that's, but yeah, I mean, there's, uh, I get why they're not, okay. So NATO Fortune 500 companies, donating to Ukraine, there are some, and there are some companies that refuse to be in Ukraine at the same time. So like it's kind of a dangerous place. But yeah, that is happening, and that's useful. And individuals are donating, governments are donating, companies are donating. We're seeing lots of that. Okay. General McNaughty says, how does the U.S. expect to defeat Russia, a nation that outproduces U.S. in every? Oh, really? Okay. Um, I will remember not to come back to trolling again. Uh, Peter and General McNaughty, if you have a legitimate comment or question, I'm happy to entertain it, but that's clearly not. Peter Dambolovlev, I'm sorry about that, Peter. Slavic Orthodox Christianity was founded in the Bulgarian Empire before the country was there was a country named Russia. The Orthodox texts are written in Old Bulgarian. Russians have nothing to do with it, but they take it as if they're the heir. It's almost like the parallel there is like Hitler with the Third Reich. It's kind of like that with Rome to Constantinople to Moscow. That's kind of how they see it, as I understand it. And I could be wrong, but that's what I've read. Okay. Josh Earnhardt says, you're a great no nonsense source and sounding board. Most of the YouTubers aren't as intellectual or enlightened. Well, we just have different niches, right? Like some are military battle maps guys. Some are trying to explain this or that. I try to go deep on a particular topic and triangulate against as many sources as I can to really understand it, and then simplify it for people to be able to make sense of what I've read. So thank you for that. USA mobilized for war and production terms would be scary. Yeah, if the USA was on a war footing, the production would be off the charts. We don't want to get to that place, but if we had to, yeah. Enforcer put a lawsuit on Mercado. That's really, wow. Okay. Yeah, Mercado was there from day one. I mean, why they have to fight, I don't understand, but wow. Dan Sear says, I'm late, so catching up on second speed. There are authoritarians at both ends of the right and left. Yep, there are. And there are anti-authoritarians on the far left. Well, yes and no, but anti-authoritarians to displace authoritarians by doing kind of somewhat authoritarianish stuff, unless I'm misunderstood. But this isn't the time or place to get into that, so I'm going to skip. Jeff Purnett says, I'm not interested in partisanship during times when national security is on the line. That's right. And, I talk about how I'm a conservative, but, and people are like, I don't know if I can watch you. Well, like, if you care about me being a conservative more than you care about Ukraine, you just answered the question of whether you should be here. If you care about Ukraine, you're home. This is why we're here. Borgfella says it was the Enforcer's regular broadcast. It just happened to be at the time that Kerch Bridge happened. Yes, and you're looking too much into that. No, I know. He said it was during his thing, and he actually had record-breaking fundraising that day, because I watched that, and he was talking about, like, look, we just happened to be on just before we went on the air. It was on, but he was talking about it, and he was giving the information as it came out before anybody was there. Okay. Kawad says left and right media dichotomy. Okay, let's get beyond left and right. People do not understand that you cannot break a motivated nation. That now you're singing my language. Richas, R-E-J-T-A-S. People do not understand that you cannot break a motivated nation. A motivated nation will do everything to survive and defeat the aggressor. That's right. For Ukraine, this is an existential threat. They have to beat the existential threat both now and in the future. So they're thinking toward the future about, like, I can't just give up this land, because if I give up this land, now Russia's even closer than where it was before, and they're coming back for round 2 or 3 or 4 later on. And they have crazy motivation on their side. The Russians don't. The Russians that are up there are like, why are we fighting? The early ones were like, where are the Nazis? And now the ones that are replacing them are like, I told I wasn't going to be sent to the front line. Why am I fighting them? Like, they're motivated enough to try to survive, but not to try to win. And there's a big difference between that. Having a vision is remarkably important, and the Ukrainians have it in spades. Okay, Slavonic isn't Bulgarian. The Cyrillic script was for old. I can't speak to that. Okay, Andre. Oh, my sound is cutting.